Hello, I'm Kristen Atkins from Impressing Minds. Today I'm going to talk about the actual interview process for your foster care home study. So you've taken your prior classes and you've done the background checks and you've done the physical home study, and maybe it's a self-study. And now you're ready for the interview with the social worker. What are they going to be asking you, and how are you going to answer? So we went into this blind. We had no idea what they were going to ask or what it was going to be like. We thought an interview, we thought they would sit there with a clipboard and ask us some questions like a job interview almost. So it's not quite like that. It's not quite like that. It's very informal. It seems to you to be informal, but they have specific questions that they are trying to get at. So there's information they need from you. They're not going to come right out and say the question, perhaps. So it may be very informal. It may be formal. It depends on your worker. It depends on the agency. They may have a question and answer form that they need to fill out. So some of the questions are sectioned into different groups and categories. So the first section and category is attitudes and beliefs regarding foster care and adoption issues. They may ask you something like, do you understand the difference between foster care and adoption? Do you know what kinship care is? Just a general idea of, do you know the basics of what you're getting into and the differences between kinship care versus foster care versus adoption? And I'm pretty sure if you're trying to get into this field of foster care, you are pretty much understanding. So the sample question they might ask you would be something like, describe your role and responsibilities in achieving the goals of child welfare. Can you explain the difference between foster care, kinship care, and adoption? And so that would lead to you just, talking. And if you don't know the answer, you're like, I don't really know what kinship care is. I think I do, but I'm not sure. Then they can clarify that for you. There's no shame in that, and there's no shame in you not knowing something. If you're really interested in doing this, it's part of their job to educate you in this particular area. So if you don't know, be honest. And it says, the next question would be, please identify the members of the child protection team and their role in serving children. What do you consider to be some advantages and disadvantages of teaming? I have a video that I'll put up here. It's called Who's Who in Foster Care, and it goes through who is the social worker, the case manager, the lawyer, the guardian ad litem, all those people that are involved. It'll go in there and explain that better for you. Number 3, how do you define permanency? So permanency, how are you going to define that? What efforts have you made to gain knowledge about the issues and needs of children in an out-of-home placement? So they're going to ask you, how have you self-educated yourself in this area? What books have you read? Have you read any books? What blogs are you following? Instagram, that's a great place for fun stuff, but the reality is most people only put good stuff on Instagram, Facebook. So you really need some blogs that are going to tell you the reality of foster care. And of course, my website, my blog, does exactly that. It is called impressingminds.com, and I'll put it up here. And you can check that out. And it's also always in the show notes. What have you done to prepare your home, extended family, and community for the placement of children? So how did you prepare your parents, your support system? Who is your support system? Are they readily available to help you? Could they help you with the laundry or the house cleaning or lawn mowing or whatever you need help with? Do you have this support system, this community, and do they know your goals? Do they know that you're going to foster? and what type of children or what age group of children that you're willing to take. Who in your family will best understand the needs you will have with a child who has experienced trauma, demonstrates behavioral problems, or experiences many developmental delays? So do you have like an aunt that had a traumatic experience, or someone else in your family that was in foster care? Who in your family is best able to understand what you're going through? That's what they're trying to seek out, if you have some community, some support. This is another question. What do you see as your role in actively promoting the reunification between children and families? What is your role as a foster parent? Of course, your role as a foster parent is to agree to reunification. Now, if you want to sabotage that, they will remove the child or children from your home. You, as a foster parent, have got to be on the side of the parent in reunification. Even though you may want to adopt this child, maybe you've fallen in love with the child, you do want to adopt if it comes up, just be careful in how you are perceived. If you're perceived in any way, shape, or form being negative toward reunification or the biofamily, they will not look favorably upon you. So, that's just a heads up. You've got to be in favor of reunification. That is the goal of foster care. No one should be allowed to come in and take your children from you and not give you a chance to correct yourself and correct things that have been going on that is not right for a parent to do. Everyone deserves the chance to, reunify with their own child. So just know that. So another question is the motivation to foster adopt. What's the motivation? Why did you decide that you wanted to foster adopt? Why would you do that? They will ask you this: why have you decided to pursue adoption or foster care at this time? Why right now? What influences have others had on this decision? So you can say, I've always wanted to foster. I've thought about it since I was a teenager. I knew this family, and actually I knew this family at church that fostered, and they had this huge family that came in, and they took up a whole row, and there were so many little kids, cute little kids that, I kept thinking, oh my gosh, there's something, happened to them that made them go into foster care. Oh, and it just broke my heart. And I wanted to be there to help heal them. As an adult, when I grew up, that's what I wanted to do. And so, what was your motivation? What is your motivation? So, is it infertility? That's something that they will perhaps discuss with you. But if infertility is the issue, just know that this foster care system will not soothe the infertility issues that you have. In fact, it can make it worse. Because if you were to foster, these kids are not idealistic all the time. And so you may think, well, if I had my own child, it wouldn't be like this. And you may resent them a little bit. So infertility is something that you need to work through before getting involved in foster care or even adoption. And maybe do some research on that and, journal about why you're really interested in it. So what level of support do you expect to receive from your extended family or friends? They want to know, again, do you have a support system? What are things that worry you about parenting a child not born to you? Are you worried that their personality will be quite different from yours? Are you worried that they will hate you? You're not my real mom. They could say that to you, and would that hurt your feelings? What's the best outcome for you and your family in this foster or adoption process? What do you think it will be like, next year, 10 years from now? How do you feel like your outcome is? What do you think your outcome will look like? And how have you dealt with issues of infertility? We've already talked about that. All right, so number 3, I have several, I think I have 12 of these. Personal and emotional security. So are you secure in yourself? Have you worked toward a goal for a long time? What was it? Did you continue or give up, and why? They're trying to find out if you are in it for the long haul. These foster children, you're not going to give up on them and send them to another foster home, or you're going to work through problems with the foster child. How do you manage obstacles? What has been the hardest situation you've ever faced? Did you overcome the situation, and what was the outcome? Because I can tell you that foster care is the most difficult situation that you'll ever face, and the outcome is not always what you want, rarely what you want. All right, describe a frustrating or disappointing experience you've encountered. How did you respond, and what was the outcome? And how do you manage your own feelings of anger? So I'll be honest, sometimes these children will make you angry, and they will get on your last nerve. They're wanting attention, and this is the way they've gone about getting attention from their former family, perhaps. And we are here to teach them maybe a new way to get attention and gain attention. And sometimes we get frustrated and angry in that process. All right, the stability and quality of interpersonal relationships. We're going to talk about your relationships. What has your relationships look like in the past? For example, how did you meet your spouse or partner? What have you all gone through? How do you fight? How do you make up? How do you get along with each other? Because they don't want to take that child from one set of bad parents, perhaps, to another set of bad parents, where those parents are going to be arguing all the time or violent toward each other. What challenges or problems have you encountered in your relationship? Can you describe them? How did you handle them? How do you demonstrate affection in your family? So lots of these children haven't had a lot of affection. So if you feel comfortable, or if the child feels comfortable, lots of hugs, you can explain how you do that with your kids now, or how you foresee playing. Do you foresee, tickling the children, or running around with the children, running around the house playing tag? How do you show affection? I'm going to get you, and run and, chase the child a little bit. Who do you rely on for support when you need it? Have they helped you in the past? So this is good for finding out if you have a community of support, because often we don't. After we start to foster, your kids go from 2 to 4 or from 2 to 6 or whatever it is. For some reason, you don't have the same support that you did before, or that you thought you did. And lots of times other foster families will support you because they know what you're going through. All right, let's see. Number 5, the ability to demonstrate stamina. So coping skills and history of stress management. How do you deal with your stress? In the past 5 years, what changes have you experienced as personally or as a family? How'd you navigate through them? Tell me about the most challenging thing you've ever had to deal with as a young person or adult, as a couple. What was it? How did you do? How did it affect you, and how did it affect your family? Okay, when you're having a rough time, what resources do you call on to cope? I remember them asking me something similar to this, and I said, I have a good meal. Like, I go out to eat and have a good meal. and they're like, oh, that's good coping, like something that's beneficial. Do you get a massage every 6 months? Even a chair massage is wonderful to relieve some stress. How do you cope with stress? Do you exercise? Do you go to the gym? However, what encounters have you had in caring for children who have experienced trauma? You can be honest here and say, I really don't have any experience. But I have read this blog that goes over these issues and this trauma, and I've done some research on trauma-informed parenting. So, you're not saying, well, I don't know what you're talking about. If you don't know what they're talking about, of course, ask. All right, and then the sixth set of questions are level of openness in family relationships. Who do you include in your family? During stressful situations, who helps you? What experience have you had caring for or relating to a child who is not biologically related to you? Have you ever babysat before? Have you ever had your sister's children over and watched them for the weekend while they got away? Have you ever been a guest speaker in a classroom or done some volunteer work at your church for the children's ministry or something? In your family, how have you handled differing viewpoints around personal values, religion, politics, lifestyles, etc.? So this would come into play if you were planning on doing teenagers. Teenagers have their own thoughts and opinions, and it's not our job really to change those opinions, but you need to deal with them. Excuse me, not really trying to change them, but get along with them. And, so basically, do you argue? Are you willing to take a more liberal approach to a lifestyle? Are you willing to? What value do you see, if any, in facilitating and supporting lifelong connections between children and important people in their past? For example, their bio family, if rights were terminated, would you make an effort to stay in touch with a grandmother or an aunt who was a significant part of that child's life? They're going to want to know, are you willing to do that? Even in foster care, are you going to be supportive of visits with the grandparents or whoever? Parenting skills. They're going to ask you lots of parenting questions. Are you able to parent? Are you rational to parent the child? So, what do you most enjoy about parenting? What do you dislike? Tell me about your children. Have you ever had a full-time responsibility for a child who had emotional or behavioral problems? And if the answer is no, then that's fine. The answer is no. You can be thinking of it between now and the interview and say, you have your answer ready. But if not, then just, be honest. The ability to empathize. They want to make sure that you're able to empathize with these children who have been taken from their home and their family. How can you tell when people in your family are upset, mad, sad, happy? How can you tell? Why do you think parents maltreat their children? How do you think children feel about their abusive parents? How would you explain the birth parent's behavior to the child? So all these are empathy questions and asking the children questions, or maybe the children will bring it up. Are you going to say, well, your parents didn't do everything right. They're not doing anything right. In fact, blah, blah, blah. Or are you going to say, well, your parents can't really take care of you right now. That's why I'm able to take care of you. They brought you to my house. So I'm going to do the best I can. So they're wanting to know, are you able to empathize? And understanding entitlement issues. This is an interesting one. Have you ever cared for someone else's child? Were you able to parent the child the same way you would your own? Why or why not? How do you plan to claim this child as a part of your family when they're only temporary? How do you introduce them when you're out and someone says, "Oh, I haven't seen your kids forever. Who's she?" What are you going to do? Describe a situation that required you to make a reasonable and prudent parent decision. What were the circumstances? What was the outcome? So you have to have some kind of resources for making wise decisions as a foster parent or adoptive parent. You can't just parent like you were parented yourself. We need to get better. Even if you had a great childhood and you were parented well, we need to get better at parenting. All right, number 10 is the ability and willingness to take a hands-on parenting approach. So this means to get down on the floor and play with the kids. Describe your parenting style. What works for you? How were you disciplined? What strategies did your parents use that you would consider effective, ineffective, appropriate, or inappropriate? How do you determine which methods of discipline are age appropriate and child specific? And don't forget that when you're talking about age, foster children are always a little behind, or usually a little behind their age. So if you have an 8-year-old, they may act like they're 5, 4, 6, 7. They don't always act typically as an 8-year-old would. How do you discipline other people's children? What disciplinary strategies are you most comfortable with? Which to avoid? All right. I want to ask you to search or research timeouts and time-ins. And what's the difference and which one is appropriate in which situation? How much direction or supervision should parents offer children? At what point do you think is too much? All right. Question 11 or section 11. Ability to make and honor commitments. Tell me about a time when you wanted to quit something that became very hard for you. What did you do? What was the outcome? This is going into giving up on the child and saying, I can't parent this child, come and get them. They're supposed to give you, or in my experience, 10 days from the time that you call and say, I want this child removed. They give you 10 days to find resources, to give you help, maybe get you some respite before actually taking the child, because it's increasing the trauma on the child. So this is talking about commitments. Tell me about a time when a commitment to you was broken and how you dealt with those feelings. Describe something to which you've made a lifelong commitment. What made it hard? Did you ever want to give up? What made you persevere? So the best example I can give for this one is marriage. So you are planning on a lifelong commitment with someone. Are you persevering? Are you persevering well? Or are you just sticking it out because it's the right thing to do, or because of the kids or whatever? Number 12 talks about religious affiliation, spiritual beliefs. So they're wanting to make sure you're kind of, open to the child's, if they're a teenager, the child's religion, if it would be different from yours. So can you understand their capacity to incorporate their religious beliefs? And the questions for that are, who do you turn to for guidance with religious or spiritual matters? What areas of life do you suspect religion might affect? What has been your level of exposure to religious or spiritual diversity? So if you're Catholic, do you know anything about Baptists or vice versa? If you're in the Bible Belt, do you know anything about Mormonism or something else? Because our job is not necessarily to convert these children. We want to provide the best influence that we can and put them on the right path. And we think the right path is the way we think in our religion. And so I believe we can give them guidance and show them, our religion without bombarding them with it. And that's what they're gonna want to hear too, because our job isn't to convert them to Catholicism. our job is just to show them the love of Christ and then let them, go toward that journey if it's the will of God. Let's just say that. So, if you have a low tolerance for adverse beliefs, they may give you additional training or trying to explain to you why, that's not necessarily right, because these aren't your children to raise until you've adopted them. Now, once you've adopted them, again, you should just influence. You should just try to influence them and not bombard them and not, hit them over the head with the Bible is the way I was explained to religion that I didn't want to hear, you Bible thumper or whatever. We don't want to be that. We want to show them love and understanding and empathy. So those were the 12 areas and some sample questions. I may do a video on each one of them. I'm not sure, but tell me in the comments, would you like to hear more questions from each section? And I might do that. Don't forget to subscribe and make sure the bell's on. So hit the subscribe button. And I really thank you for watching to the end.